Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jake, this is Nadia, this is Buddy, this is Sedona, and today we are talking about The Fabelmans, Steven Spielberg's new movie about himself.
Yeah.
You know, when you're Steven Spielberg, I think you're allowed to be a little self-indulgent from now and then. Very interesting, personal film from someone who we don't really expect super personal movies from. Although so many of his movies are very personal in a lot of ways. So what did you think of The Fabelmans?
Well, a lot of his movies are more metaphorical, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you get to see this is actually like literal in a lot of sense. First of all, before I get into the actual film, a movie long like this, it was good to say the least, but I just was so hungry. Like,
okay, that's not the movie's problem that you are hungry. That's not on the movie.
No, I mean, like, it's just like stressing me out a little bit because of some real
If there was some
stressful
tough
family dynamic, and you just want to kind of like stress eat. So just a warning, if you haven't seen it.
If your parents are divorced, just settle in, maybe have a drink before
My
watching.
parents aren't divorced, and I needed like to eat a whole Taco Bell. So overall film, I really liked it because one thing that I thought about the film was in his previous films, like he has the opportunity to be not as biased or as reflective over his own life, to talk about directing what's best for the scene. So it's interesting to see something that is about his own life. I doubt it's like to the nail his own life. It's probably fictional in a lot of sense.
Poetic interpretation.
Yeah, but I could see the difference in this film versus a lot of his typical films. Reflection of the director, I guess, and the biases play.
It's a therapy movie, but in a way that wasn't obnoxious. It just felt like, I mean, from what I know, he collaborated with Tony Kushner, the award-winning playwright, and who's been collaborating with him on his Lincoln and West Side Story. They wrote the screenplay and just kind of like were able to dive into his feelings about like his family and his parents and also filmmaking in general.
Yep, and I really thought it was interesting that he made this film after his parents died. And it makes sense if you watch it why he would do that. I really enjoyed Seth Rogen's performance.
Yeah, he was really good. I mean,
it's hard to kind of see that it's him. It was still Seth Rogen, but it was also kind of like he wasn't as extravagant, I guess, as he is in other films.
But he brought the perfect kind of tone because the character he was playing was supposed to be like the fun uncle, family friend who like brought life to the family.
I also like how everything unravels in the film in a way where you're able to understand specific characters.
What's really interesting is that like it is a very autobiographical film about really tough things, and a lot of scenes were hard to watch, and I was really surprised with the kind of fucked up dynamics that were explored, just like his relationship with his mom, his relationship with the whole, his dad, like it's a very tricky thing, and it's really interesting that he was able to capture that, which is its own fucked up thing, but do it with the kind of distance, I think. Like that's the thing. Like there was a sense of objectivity in a sense where it was almost like he was forgiving his parents, but also just seeing them as people.
Yeah.
I got that sense, and it was really interesting. And it still had that Spielberg like touch though. That had the humorous moments.
I will agree and disagree all together because I do think that there is a little bit like he has a Spielberg touch. Yes, he has that, like he can distance himself, but then there's moments where it's almost like he's battling distancing himself in a way that is beautiful, because you can see an overarching scene where you're seeing everyone's perspective, but then you can also see his own perspective in there. You can see why he took the course of actions that he did.
I mean,
is very personal, and that isn't distancing himself at all. And you can especially see that with Sammy, who's playing the younger version of Steven Spielberg. I think it's really interesting because when a scene shifts when certain perspectives shift in a scene. So, for example, from Sammy to his sister, you can see other characters, such as the parents, in a different light.
Yeah.
But then it shifts back to Sammy, and you can see, I can see exactly how this narrator is able to forgive or able to be angry, or like you're able to justify that choices, and every choice is very active, is what makes this movie interesting, because this is a very long film. It's 2-hour film, and it's
over. I mean,
2.5 hours, I think, almost.
But it's interesting because the structure is, there's no real like conventional structure to this, it felt like. But
and the ending isn't conventional either.
I was honestly a little bit surprised it ended on that point, but I also understand why it did. I think the most amazing thing about it is that it is very like surface level, very simple story. Like there's not a lot going on in the movie. You know, he's growing up, his parents are having marital problems. Like it's the kind of Oscar bait kind of movie you know, think about, or whatever, boring shit. But there's a lot of humor and a lot of really just great scenes that it makes it really way more complex, especially when you consider the meta element of he's making this film about himself. There's one line in the movie that I just couldn't stop laughing at, but you didn't realize until later in the movie that Spielberg was directing the film. You thought it was a movie made by someone about Spielberg's life. And did that change how you viewed things once you realized that halfway through the movie, your interpretation of the events?
No, I felt like it justified my interpretation of the events, not changed it, because I was like, what I'm saying, I felt like the perspective was shifting and it became so personal, objective. When it came to like, when we're not seeing it through Sammy's vision and we're maybe looking at it through the sister, or when we're looking at it just as like an audience, right? Just like admiring the dynamics in there. What was beautiful was how Steven was able to capture the drama, the pure pain of his childhood, yet with so much grace.
Without
humor.
melodrama.
And it wasn't like, I'm a victim. I had a horrible childhood. It was like, my childhood was a mix of adventure, sadness, laughter, difficulty.
But it was also like, this is all, it all contributes to each other. The filmmaking, the parents, it's all part of that. That's just like,
it just felt very human. And it was beautifully made. And that's the Steven Spielberg touch, is that a lot of his film is able to touch on that. Like, I don't know, like the epic E.T., you look at that and you're able to touch on like the dynamics of family and everything else. You really see like, okay, you can draw parallels between the way that he portrays his relationship with his parents, his sibling, to the way that he's made and portrayed a relationship and dynamics.
All the childhood stuff, like you see it in the movie and it's like, oh, he was ripping that all off from obviously his own life and childhood and his experiences, you know, the riding around on bicycles in the, you know, California suburbs, you know, just that kind of stuff. And
you can see like the Arizona desert, like you can really see so much inspiration from that too.
Of course. But I do want to really emphasize something I love about this movie, and I think if you are kind of hesitant to see it because you are kind of tired, I think like many are, about to see a kind of like Oscar bait movie that's like about the magic of movies, you know, and the magic of cinema. We kind of went in expecting that a little bit, but I was surprised to see, kind of like with Babylon in a funny way, I was surprised to see that it was really also like, there's the magic of cinema element, but it's also about how like cinema, filmmaking, just art in general is kind of like an intoxicating thing and not always a good thing. And it's very dangerous. You know, there's a speech that his uncle gives, you know, very powerful, great scene. It really shows that there's a kind of like psychological kind of like dark element where you can see Sammy learning that filmmaking itself is like a weapon and like can harm people. There are scenes that show like omitting things in filmmaking, and it's interesting because it is very meta in that way, where Sammy's making these like high school 8mm films with his parents in it, while Steven Spielberg now is making this big budget Hollywood movie about his parents. And we'll get into more of that later, but it was just like fascinating. And I do feel like reveal more of itself upon more watches.
What would you rate it?
Like an 8 or 9 out of 10. I don't know.
I would give it an 8. I think there are some holes.
Okay.
And the holes I want to talk about in the spoiler section because there's no way I can say it. Well, actually, there is. The holes that I'm talking about is basically that there are a couple of scenes that I felt like it wasn't followed through. And it was just randomly there for no reason at all. That kind of makes you feel like it's going to take a twist and turn and you're really going to see like maybe a fictionalized aspect of his life, or you're going to see something that is really out there, I guess you can say. But then there's no follow-up through that, and it was kind of like disappointing.
I do think it could have been a little shorter.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, spoilers for The Fabelmans. I think you agree people should watch it, especially if you love Spielberg movies, you know?
Spoilers?
Spoiler time.
All right. Well, I'll talk with my dislikes because I don't think there are many scenes that I disliked, but the follow through that was lacking that I was alluding to in the non-spoiler section was, for example, when Michelle Williams, who plays Sammy's mom, her mother dies and she's really sad and mourning, obviously. She has a nightmare that is portrayed as real, where she gets a phone call, and as audience members, you hear the phone ringing, you hear her mom speak through from the other side, and then I'm thinking, like, because I'm able to hear it myself,
right.
that, like, wait, does she have supernatural powers? Because this whole time in the film, I think that there's something wrong with her. The way that, like, the unbiasedness, the objectivity I felt like was portrayed of the mother, I felt like maybe she has some issues because she would be very erratic with her behavior.
I think that's what it was alluding to and kind of...
Yeah. But then with that scene, I felt like, wait, is she like, is she a psychic? Is she a psychic medium? Like, does she have some kind of... Because we as audience could hear the mom as well after she's dead. It's like, stop warning, whatever. And then she's like, the next morning she's cooking, she's like making all this food, stressed about it, and then she's talking openly to her kids and her husband about her dream. So you get the sense that she has a lot of these. And then her dream, what her mom said comes true, where the mom's brother comes in and goes, oh no. And it was kind of funny. It's like, oh no, my mom was talking about the uncle, don't let him in, you know?
I know, like be warned, like batten down the hatches, don't let this new intruder in. But what's funny though is that she was kind of right in that sense, where he comes in and forms this bond with her, connection with her son, and he's like the wild artist, and he's like, you must do this, you must follow this path
and leave your family behind. And
but it's like I think there's kind of like a connection there, and I love when they're waving goodbye and then the uncle just like stares at Sammy and everyone looks at him like...
I love that part there because the mom goes, I don't know what Mama was so worried about.
Yeah.
And then Sammy goes, and then goes stares. And that I thought that was really funny. But anyway, there's no follow-up through with that because we never see that again. And you kind of wonder, like, you just kind of see more of an erratic behavior. But I just thought...
She ends up saying, I'm going to therapy now.
And later on, but it's interesting because, like, that's a very wild scene, right? Where we are hearing the voice of the mom as well. So you kind of think that there was going to be more instances like that. I mean, because it's more biographical, it makes sense that there isn't. Yet it was a little frustrating for me and just kind of having a little peek at that and then nothing really. It just felt very random in that sense. That's really what I didn't like as an example. But what I did like in the opposite end of the spectrum was what I was alluding to in the non-spoiler section again, where I was talking about how you could see the Steven Spielberg switching between his objectivity and his biases. So, for example, when they go camping in Phoenix, Arizona, or I don't know if it's Phoenix, but somewhere in the desert, and the mom starts dancing, right? And then the uncle and the dad are like, go film your mom, you know, because he's filming. And then he's like, well, there's not enough light. So they turn on the car lights. And then
such an interesting scene.
That was an interesting scene. And then you can see everything.
That was like a fucked up, like
you can
stark scene. That was a very weird scene.
But that's what I liked about it.
That's what I did like too. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. So like when the mom dances and you could see everything with the sister, like it switches to the sister's perspective where she's embarrassed and she's like, Mom, I don't know if you know this, but we can see inside your dress.
Yeah.
And it's like weird because the uncle is there just admiring her and the
Sammy's
dad is also admiring
it.
and then the kids are there and you can see there's something going on between her and the uncle very clearly, like that there's some kind of affair or something. You could see the embarrassed daughter and kind of like the creepiness of the scene, right? But then it switches to Sammy just filming. In my perspective, it becomes very wholesome in some ways where he's just filming his mom being happy and dancing and he's not thinking about it in a weird sexual level. See how bizarre everything is as a whole, but then you're seeing Sammy film it and obviously like he's not filming it for like, you know, his mom like being able to is basically you could see everything through her dress. He's just filming like his mom being happy and dancing, and later on when he reviews the scenes we don't see anything that's see-through. We see just his mom being happy and his mom just like living her life. And so that is the beauty of this film and really the beauty of Steven Spielberg is that you're like it's amazing how you can make a scene go from creepy to just wholesome.
Well, there's Spielberg for you. I mean, and that scene where, you know, when he realizes like all the footage he's seeing of his mom being together with his uncle and like flirting and
I actually see him kissing.
Yeah, and he makes the realization. And the next scene, because he's editing like a compilation to show everyone, the next scene he's showing them, and I said to you, I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad. Because I thought he's going to show the truth. He's going to show what actually happened. But I think what's so telling about, and maybe a moment of like self-awareness, you know, is that Spielberg showed the lie instead, the fantasy, and it makes his mom happy, but he's like dying inside.
Well, and I think that's the biggest thing about film that really connects the audience to why he loves directing so much is because through the pain, he's able to manipulate scenes and different types of format, just movie making process, right? To really show what he wants to show that's unlike reality itself. And so, for example, this camping scene where just the scene that I was talking about, you know, goes from creepy to he makes it very wholesome and his mom just dancing, right? Or editing process where he discovers that his mother has been having an affair with someone he considered an uncle who's really close to him. He omits that part out and he creates it where his mom is just an innocent, lovely, happy, dancy, very loving woman.
And I think that also tells how his relationship to his mom was for many years, because like you saw in interviews that Spielberg said he blamed his dad for everything.
Oh, yeah.
For years.
Yeah.
And it kind of is a reflective there where he was just like, no, I just want to see the good side.
I just want to see the good side because, you know, his mom was the artist.
She supported him.
Yeah, and then his dad really didn't understand why he wasn't going to engineering and something more practical. But back to like love of filmmaking and how he manipulates reality to show really the vision that he wants to see. I think it's also there when we see the prom video.
Oh yeah,
because he was
great scene.
Yeah, because he was so incredibly bullied by these group of kids who were anti-Semitic, and he makes a compilation of videos where he portrays one of the bad guys as a hero. And
that's so bizarre, but really interesting.
And he makes everything so happy. And it was also like one of the funniest scene, I think, in the whole entire film is that when the bad guy is like, why would you do that? Do you want me to feel bad? And he starts crying and he's like, you better not tell anyone about this. He's like, I won't unless I make a movie about it. And
it's like, unless I make a movie about it one day.
No, I wouldn't. You know, and it's just the funniest thing because he ends up making a movie about it. But
well, I think that's when you realize you're like, wait, did Spielberg direct this?
Yeah.
Like, but that's such a great thing. Like, I don't know. That's just like very
it's really
cheeky.
Awesome. And I think like it really shows why his passion behind it, because a lot of times when you see like film directors, or when you see like movies where you're portraying film directors, you kind of see like more so the ambition behind, like, I have to make it. This is what I'm meant to do, and I have this higher purpose.
No, it wasn't.
And it wasn't like that way, yeah. And I love that because it's so, you can get very whiplashy, which is fine on his own era, but it's like talks about like, no, I really my soul needed this. This is the way I coped through the stressful parts of my life.
And that's what's so beautiful about it, because you could watch it, you could put your own thing in there. It could be engineering, it could be cars, it could be like anything that, like, when you're in pain, when you're a child, seeking self-expression and how that can like lift you up. You know, it's very...
And that's the interesting part, because we see some of that with his dad, who's so polar opposite of him, right? Like, Sammy is an artist, he wants to direct, and then his dad is very analytical and engineer. Mm-hmm. But then you see the same passion.
He's so passionate about it the same way.
About everything the same thing. And you see parallels between him and his dad that were really unnoticed. There was a scene where his dad was like, you kind of do what I kind of do, right? But then it's like trying to connect with him. But you can really see that, like, parallels between him and his dad more than him and his mom, because him and his dad kind of keep their emotions
in. They just need to block out the pain.
They block out the pain through their craft, right? So, like, his dad is an engineer. He wants to invent new things. And I was researching his dad and after the film, and his dad was one of the greatest minds of his generation for engineering.
Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. And then Steven Spielberg is one of the greatest directors of his generation. So it's amazing.
I do love, though, how it doesn't come across in a way where it's like, I was born for that. Like, this is my calling. Like, cinema is a higher calling that I was drawn to. It's just like...
It doesn't glamorize it at all.
No, it's just like, it's very like personal and relatable to just like family life and struggling as a kid and trying
just
to
coping.
Just trying to find a way. And like when he's trying to tell his girlfriend, like, that I love you. And I
oh my God, his girlfriend.
But like in that moment, it's so sad. And I really connected with this. But in that moment, she's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you trying to change things? And he went, my parents are getting divorced. Why are you bringing that up now? Which is a fair point, but it goes to show, like, he's in so much pain. He doesn't know what to do. And then there's that great scene, like you said, where the bully comes. And what's amazing is that the bully he's not mad about him trying to be mocked or anything. He's mad that he showed everyone something that he could never achieve. And it's like you get a different look at the bully of like how he's like has this pressure to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And in seeing that, on screen was like very hard. And then kind of connected there.
Oh yeah. Couple things I want to talk about is the girlfriend really quick. I thought it was amazing how it was just one of the most humorous things ever, turning like people who are anti-Semitic into something that was like the humorous part of that only Steven Spielberg could do from his own experience that are painful. But also showing how a kid his age copes with not belonging and assimilating, right, into society that isn't made for people like him at that time. Really want to say that the part with John Ford was funny. I thought it was made up until you told me that you've actually heard interviews of him describing exactly that.
Well, I was very interested in this scene, obviously, because they cast David Lynch. And I was, I like keep up with this. I was reading like that David Lynch was cast as John Ford. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so good. I bet it's going to be that scene that Spielberg famously said about how he met John Ford. And you know what? That scene is probably made up, his own bullshit story about how he met John Ford or whatever. Maybe it was slightly different. But if you go online and watch that clip where he talks about meeting John Ford, it is beat for beat, line for line, what happens in the movie. Almost like down to every single moment. It's so funny that it's like the literal story that he does. And how do you feel about that being the last scene in the movie?
Well, it was very bizarre the way that it ended, because it just goes from all these things happening for him, and he's like talking in the scene right before the John Ford scene to his dad, like how he's a failure and behind. And then so you think that it's going to end with like him kind of quote unquote making it into like getting his first gig as a director. But I will say, I'll be honest, like it was long enough. So I was glad that it ended.
Uh-huh.
But it also makes sense the way it ended it because John Ford goes, "Where's the horizon?"
Mhm.
And and he picks a horizon, and at the end you kind of see the horizon.
Well, it's an amazing last shot where like it changes, like you.
Yeah.
Like that was just great.
Yeah,
like,
and then it goes very well, and then we know this is biographical. Like we know what happens with Steven Spielberg. Yeah. We know how his story ends. So I think the more I think about it, I like the way it ended, even though initially I thought it was a bizarre, because it goes into not like overindulging himself and not overindulging his like, I'm Steven Spielberg, look how grand I am. It goes into like, this is my diary. With any diary, like you're going to see things that are sad, funny, humorous from my own perspective.
Yeah.
But I don't want to glamorize myself. I want to get personal and express things that I've been holding, onto for years.
Yeah. And I think that scene is kind of like, it's come full circle. You see him watching The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance earlier in the movie, and then you see the poster, when he's in John Ford's office. There's like the romantic, the Searchers music plays and everything, but when he goes in there, it's so matter of fact, and Ford is so blunt and no bullshit that it kind of adds to the sense of like, I don't know, just kind of like the normalcy of it and the kind of like nonchalance of it. But it's
it also doesn't like fantasize it too much because it's like John Ford isn't like, let me give you a job, kid. It's like,
he's
John
like,
Ford is like, you know what? I'm a big deal. You're
gift.
here for this. And it's like, no, he didn't even say you have a gift. He was just like...
No, that's what I mean. He doesn't say you have a gift.
Yeah.
He's just like, once you can tell the difference between the horizon being at the bottom of the frame or the top of the frame.
He's very practical, right?
Yeah. And he's like, now get the fuck out.
Yeah. He's like, I'm glad that you know where it is.
I love that. And it's just a great movie. I mean, the more I talk about it, the more I'm like realizing how much it really did impact me. And it really stuck with me.
Same. Well... Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching.
And we will see you next time.
Yes, see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.